Hello and welcome to this presentation from Pluralsight. My name is Andrew Mallet and I'm going to be your instructor as I help guide you through the module Configuring an Apache Web Server. As we work our way through this module, of course, we're going to be looking at working with our Apache Web Server on our Ubuntu 2 system. We'll be installing Apache, looking at the Apache configuration, and see how on Debian-based systems such as Ubuntu, we can enable and disable sites, modules, and configurations. So we'll see how all of these configuration files plug together to try and give you an easy to manage installation of Apache. We'll be looking at configuring and working with the Apache logs. We'll see how we can restrict access to a web page. We'll see that by default we do have our server status module up and running, but we probably only want this accessible to a certain number of hosts, so we can put in restrictions. We'll finish up by looking at configuring a web proxy server, so we can reduce the amount of hosts on your network that need to walk out and venture into that wonderful world of the internet. They can access it through your web proxy, and we can control what and how they access the web server through our proxy settings. We'll be working much in the same way as we will throughout this course by implementing the server, both the web server and the proxy server, on Ubuntu 2. Ubuntu 1 is going to be our web client, and it can access the web pages on Ubuntu 2, and then when we've implemented the proxy server, be accessing any of our internet web resources through the proxy server. And first up, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we've got Apache installed and up and running. So working on Ubuntu 2, we can install Apache 2, which is the package that we want. We'll also add in the documentation, not just because we're being good, but we're able to show you that installing the documentation also means that the documentation becomes available through the Apache Web Server. And to be able to browse proper web pages rather than just using curl, we'll put on a command line browser W3M. We can show, once it's installed, that the web server is up and running by looking at our listening TCP ports. And then we're going to be able to connect via our W3M browser through to our local host. And we'll get the default welcome page. But as well as the default welcome page, we can go through and access our documentation. This is available both on the internet, but is also installed onto our web server when we put on the Apache 2 documentation. We can also access a status page. We'll also see that this is the status page that we probably want to restrict access to at a later date. But for the moment, we can see the pages that are available to us. In our previous module, we were looking at implementing DNS, and we can continue looking at our DNS settings. So I'm going to open up on the Ubuntu 2 system, our database. Within our local file, I'm going to add in an entry for www.local. It's an internet setting, and we're putting in then a CNAME. It's really an alias. www.local is going to point through to ubuntu2.local. So we can then access our web server by using the URL www rather than having to think, oh, our web server is on Ubuntu 2. Once we've done that, we can also make sure that we do update the serial number. Saving our changes. We don't need to reload everything. We just need to reload that zone. So read that in. The in here is just saying that it's internet settings that we're reading from the zone. And now we should be able to query and get the result coming back for our CNAME entry. Also, we can now use that entry as our URL to browse to the website. All looking very good, isn't it? But what we really want to understand here is adding to our DNS configuration and adding in that canonical name or CNAME, which is our aliases, which we didn't look at when we looked at DNS before. But again, we'll be putting other types of records in as we go through so we can learn more about our DNS settings and DNS records. But for the moment, I really do encourage you to join me at the command line for our first demonstration where we get this up and running.